When I first considered freelancing, the thing that used to keep me from making the plunge and literally used to keep me up at night worrying about was what happens if it all disappears tomorrow? Basically, what if that one contract that I was working at that time, that my whole income depends on, quietly went away? What if the contract ended prematurely? What if the budget got slashed? Or what if the company decided to restructure and I wasn't left with a chair at the table? Now, that fear is exactly why I built my freelance career the way that I did. And it's why years later, I still swear by the same piece of advice that your grandmother probably gave you. And that's, don't put all your eggs in one basket. It really has become my motto. It really has given me a sense of stability in what may otherwise feel like an unstable freelance world. Now, I know that it sounds like investing advice, but in this case, it's really advice on how you could possibly structure your freelance business so that you feel more secure. I know I followed it since I started freelancing full-time, and I've never looked back, and I would never consider not following this strategy. Hi, I'm Jennifer. I'm from the Freelance Shift, and I help aspiring freelancers build profitable freelance or solopreneur businesses, basically using AI and other proven modern strategies. Thanks for joining me. So, as a single mom, financial stability isn't a nice to have for me. It's everything. And early on, when I was deciding if I was going to take this freelance plunge full time, I realized something that I don't think a lot of people figure out until maybe it's too late or they've experienced something negatively. And it's that even the best contract in the world can vanish overnight. And not because you did anything wrong, just because that is the reality of how business works sometimes. Priorities shift, projects wrap up early on occasion, and budgets get cut so that you, on a contract, get impacted. So, thinking about all of that with the fact that I needed to have that financial stability made me make a decision that I've never regretted. I decided I would not let my family's security rest on one employer or one contract. So, what does that look like in reality? How have I actually structured it? Well, this is going to sound crazy, but I juggle typically 4 to 5 different projects at once. I know that that sounds insane to some people, but it actually works for me. And I think that it's because of the various types of projects that I work on. So let me give you a little more detail so that you can decide if I'm crazy or if this is actually a good strategy that may work for you. Now, for me, I strategically choose projects that don't demand the same hours every week. Some of the projects that I work on are steady. They're weekly or even, 5 days a week commitments, where others ebb and flow, and I'm working them much less consistently, but they're still basically an egg in my basket. So let me tell you about what I'm working on right now so that you can get a picture. Now, of course, this hasn't always been the case, but it is typical of how I've been operating. So I have one contract that I'm working on for a large global company doing AI training. Right now, that is my biggest chunk of work. I pretty much work on this project every weekday, at least for a portion of the day. Now, another project that I do is leadership training for a state organization. Now, that is very consistent. I've been doing it for several years, but it's not as much of a time commitment. They run a 12 class series, and they run those a few times a year. The classes themselves are 3 hours, so it's not a full day commitment. So I basically just, schedule those in to my normal weekday schedule. Then I do work as an AI expert. Basically, I evaluate and critique different AI system outputs in the hopes of helping the AI system improve. This is the newest of these current contracts that I'm on. I've only been doing this for 3 or 4 months, but it only requires a 10-hour a week time commitment, and it's something that I can literally work on anytime. So I will jump on and do this for some time on the weekend, and then usually a couple nights a week to fulfill that 10-hour commitment. I also manage an online event consulting group, which is another task that probably sounds like it would take up a lot of my time, but it really doesn't. It takes a couple of hours a day on average. There are days where it does take more commitment, but I generally know about those days in advance. I basically just keep the ship running. Sometimes I do help to support an event, but if that's the case, I always know about that in advance. So I do block out my schedule for those times. And the part that I actually do managing the program, it's pretty flexible. It doesn't have to be done at a certain time of day, so I can basically work that around the trainings that I do. Then I also do tech onboarding for another global company, but that's a very low time commitment. It's another gig that I've been working on for several years, but it's only 2 afternoons a month for about a 2.5 to 3 hour time commitment. So again, it's not a huge time commitment, but it's something that's steady and reliable that I've been doing for a while. And basically, it's another egg in my basket. So yes, I recognize that that's a lot on my plate. And I know that my ability to juggle eggs is not the same as everyone's. Not everyone has such an appetite for that many eggs, if I'm going to keep this analogy going. But for me, it really does work. It's a lot, but it sort of balances itself out, because if one project slows down, which has happened to me in the past when I'm on other projects, I'm not left scrambling because I have a really big gap. So nothing on my list is guaranteed to last, of course. And that is the same situation for all of us, whether you're a freelancer or you're an employee. Things happen, companies reorganize, technology changes things, roles change. But in my case, at least I know that if something does slow down, I don't have to necessarily panic because I do have other things to fall back on. So in my case, I treat the mix of my projects that I'm working on like it's a living thing, which is another thing that I know sounds crazy, but just, if you're still with me, just bear with me a little bit longer. So I'm not just holding on to 5 projects and hoping that they stay forever. This list that I gave you isn't something that I've had forever. If you'd asked me a year ago, this mix would have looked different, and I'm sure that it's going to look different at some point in the future. Exactly when? I'm not sure. But instead of hoping that my projects stay forever and holding on to that, I'm constantly watching for what's next. Even when, like now, I'm fully booked. And this isn't because I'm unhappy with what I have. It's because I'd rather be the one steering my ship for my own career evolution rather than get blindsided by it. And sometimes I know that that means that I'm going to be adding a sixth project, in my case, temporarily. And then other times it means that I'm leaving one of these projects behind because it's run its course and I've found something better. And again, that approach has really worked for me, approaching it in that manner, trying to stay flexible, because that's the real safety net, not just having multiple income streams, but staying open and flexible enough to keep building new income streams before you actually need them. So, something that no one else has maybe ever told you is that juggling multiple gigs is really something that sharpens you as a professional. I truly believe that. I feel like the leadership training makes me a better communicator and coach, where I feel like the AI evaluation work keeps me on the cutting edge of where technology is headed. Of course, the tech onboarding forces me to explain systems that are new to people, and as those systems update, I have to keep myself up to date and be able to explain those updates in a way that people truly understand. And then the event consulting helps keep my organizational skills sharp, and I also stay up to date on all of the features with Zoom and Teams. So the wildest part of all of this is that these skills don't stay in their own lane. So I'm not on a 5-lane highway, so to say, because these skills all bleed into each other, and every role combines to make me better at the others. And as a result, doors have opened for me that I would have never found otherwise. And the same strategy will work for you if you're open to those opportunities and, maybe juggling a couple of eggs at a time. So I think that smart investors don't dump every dollar into one stock, right? They spread out the risk. Isn't that what we're taught? Well, doesn't your freelance or solopreneur career deserve the same logic? Having multiple skills, multiple income streams, multiple relationships across different organizations. So I challenge you, don't look at that as scattered. Look at it as strategic. And think of it as you investing in your own staying power. Now, I didn't just stumble onto this approach. This approach was very, very purposeful for me, as I mentioned. It's something that I felt that I had to do right from the beginning in order to secure that stability that I wanted for my family. I felt like I couldn't just hinge on one contract and that particular company's workings at that time. And so far for me, it's really worked. I've got projects that challenge me, they help me grow, and they help keep the lights on, which is important, right? All of those things at once combined. So yes, I'm still watching the horizon for what's next, because the workforce doesn't stand still, and neither should you. The truth is, in my opinion, the people who thrive long-term in solopreneur or freelance roles aren't the ones who have the safest single client. They're the ones who never put all their eggs in one basket. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe. Hope to see you on the next one. Take care.